A counterexample is what we use to prove that a conditional statement is false. So when you're trying to decide whether or not something works as a counterexample, you need to check two things. You need to check and see, does it make the hypothesis true? And does it make the conclusion false? So first check the hypothesis. Make sure the hypothesis is true. Then go check the conclusion. Make sure that conclusion is false. So here's an example of a conditional statement. If a number is an integer, then it is positive. So our hypothesis comes after the word if. Our hypothesis is a number is an integer. So for these options, first we need to go check and see if they are actually integers, because for it to be a counterexample to the statement, the hypothesis has to be true. So these have to be integers. So we can rule some of these options out if they're not an integer. And remember, an integer is all the whole numbers, but they can be positive or negative. So no fractions, no decimals. So option A, 4.25, that's out of the running because it's not an integer. See ya. So it's not an integer, so it's not making our hypothesis true. And then we can also eliminate option C because negative, ooh, yikes, don't know what happened there. Negative 1.5 is not an integer either. So for the same reason, it's not an integer, so it doesn't make the hypothesis true. We can eliminate those two answer choices. And then for for option B, 3 is an integer. So this hypothesis is true, but we need to make the conclusion false. So 3 is a positive number. 3 is positive, so it doesn't make the conclusion false. So it's not a counterexample. It's just an example. Here's an example of a positive integer. So 3 gets eliminated. And so that leaves us with D, negative 7. Negative 7 is an integer, so that's making the hypothesis true, but it's not positive, so it's making the conclusion, remember the part that comes after the word then, makes the conclusion is positive, false. So D, negative 7, is our counterexample.